Alright, so welcome to our 6-1 notes. And so we're going to talk today about the basics of GUI programming. And so those two basics that you have to remember are going to be called JFrame and JPanel. And so these are the notes, and you can read through them. I'm not going to go through them all because of the time's sake here. But a few things, I'm just going to skim through the important parts of the notes, and then we'll do the programming practice, and then we'll have the homework. So this will not be on the AP test, but I think it's important because a lot of our concepts from Chapter 5 are illustrated in Chapter 6. Our Semester 2 project will be to use graphics, and so you need to know this for that as well. A couple of main differences. So our GUI program is still going to have a main method, but it's not going to just kind of start and kind of, go this line, that line, this line, that line, just kind of roll down or like a loop. It's something called event-driven programming is what we're doing now. And so basically, you're kind of designing these components to wait to be pushed or pressed or whatever, and then you're going to program how they react to that. And we're going to talk about that throughout the chapter. Today is just the very basics, like I said. Today is about JFrame and JPanel. Okay, so JFrame is our window. You can read more about that, but basically you can open and close them. It's going to store things, but it's going to store our content, which in our case is going to be the JPanel. Okay, so the main thing to remember for today: JFrame window, JPanel content. Okay, so we'll program this, but this is kind of the main. You'll see this over and over again. This kind of boilerplate here for the JFrame creation. And again, like I said, there's a main method we're going to type up, and it looks like it might just end here. But the main routine ends, but the window is still going to be open. It's going to be able to react to your buttons and your resizing of it and things like that. Again, this is event-driven programming, a different way to do things than what we've done before. Okay, and second of all, JPanel is our content. So this one's a little bit complicated. There's two main ways to use JPanels. The first is as a drawing surface, and so that would be if I want to draw like boxes and circles and have them move around. We're not going to do that today. We're just going to do the basics, so we're not going to draw at all this method 1. We're going to use that as method 2, just a container for other stuff like buttons, sliders, text fields. And so you can read through this, but it has a little bit extra stuff you can read through, but yeah, so just for your information here, 6.1.2 is kind of a preview for section 6.2. So there's layout, ways that we can specify how everything is laid out. So hold on, let me load up. Okay, so this is what we're going to design in our coursework today. So you can see that we can resize it, we can click on them, nothing's going to happen, but we could program what would happen if we clicked on this. And so we also can see the need for how do I put this at the bottom, how do I put this at the top, what if I want to put something in the middle. You could do that by hand using coordinates, like put this at coordinate, whatever. But it's much easier to simply use a layout manager. And we'll just do the very basics of that today. So we're going to be using our JPanel as a container. We're going to add stuff, and we're going to use a layout manager. Okay, so one type of layout manager is called a border layout, which we will practice. You can add stuff to the center, to the south, to the north, to the east, to the west, and you'll see an example of that. And then, like I said, in event-driven programming, you can click, and it's not just kind of going from line 1 to line 2 to line 3. You can click, and you have to program how to respond when I click the play button or the next button or whatever. And so that is going to generate something called an event, and we're going to program something called a listener, which will kind of listen in on for that event to happen. Like me clicking on this button, it's going to generate the event, and we program then what would happen when they click on OK. Again, this will be more in the future, but just wanted to get you exposed to this idea now. Here's an example of that. You don't have to worry about all the details yet. But we would have to do things like registering the listener, like, okay, this is my listener guide, he's going to listen on this OK button here. We'll do all this in section 6.3. Here's the kind of general technique for programming GUI. And finally, so a little bit of history. The original GUI toolkit was called AWT or AUT. We're going to be doing Swing, introduced in Java 1.2. We'll still use several parts of the AWT. The newest one, which we're not going to do, is called JavaFX. So that's the longer notes. If you look at the all notes section as well, here I just put the kind of most basic and important parts of each section. So again, for section 6.1, it's all about JFrame, which is your window. Here, the main things you would need, we'll go through those together. JPanel, again, as I said, is the content. So JFrame window, JPanel content, again, has two uses. One as a drawing surface where you can draw like shapes or whatever on there. We'll do this later on. Today, we're just practicing using it as a container for other components. So you can have layout, like border layout, grid layout, flow layout, and you can add things, like you can add components within components. Like you can have a label within a panel or things like that. Okay, so we're going to get to our work now. So if you could switch over to the test panel main and testpanel.java files. We're going to take a look at those. Test panel main and testpanel.java. Okay, so let's look at test panel main first. As we said, the two parts for today are JFrame and JPanel. So we're going to start off, let's create test panel main. We have our main method here. We want to import Java, so it's import, it's in javax.swing. You could do .star, but since it's just JFrame, we'll just do that. Okay, so basically our goal is to create just the outer window here. And so we're only going to do this once here, but let's just type it up by hand. So we have a JFrame object, let's call it window, just to remind ourselves what it is. And that's going to be a new JFrame. What you pass into the constructor is just going to be the title. So you can call it whatever you want. And then we have a bunch of instance methods that we can do to set kind of different things for this container window. So we can set the size to be, different dimensions here. So I'm going to set the size to be 600 by 400. You can obviously change that if you want. I can do something called set location, which would be where is it going to start off with. Now the coordinates are going to start off with 0, 0 is in the upper left-hand corner, and then it's going to move to the right. So this is actually my x coordinate. Let me just, here it is. So the coordinate system is going to be 0, 0 is the upper left-hand corner. The x-axis is going this way, and the y-axis is going this way. And then, 0, 0 is your upper left-hand corner. So the 600, 400 is kind of given, this is 600, this is 400. And the location is, well, on our screen, if, the very upper left-hand corner of our screen is 0, 0, where do I want this window to be set at? So you can set the location to be, if you said 0, 0, it would just appear in the upper left-hand corner of your computer screen. That's kind of a little bit awkward, so let's make it 100, 100, but you could play around with that. Next up, what happens if I click the button to close the window? Do I want to close the whole program, or do I want to do something else? So that's called default close operation. And these are just, you have a bunch of static things to choose from here. So JFrame dot, you can take a look here. Basically the one we're going to use over and over again is just exit on close. So this basically just means when I click to close the window itself, the program will also exit. Now, from here, you're going to do all this, and then you're going to also, a window again does not have any content. So you want to set what is going to be contained in that window. And for our chapter, this whole chapter 6 pretty much, we're going to be setting it as to be some kind of JPanel, right? JPanel is the content. So we're going to call set content pane, set content pane. And it could be any JPanel, right? So you could make it just like a, you could do like new JPanel, that would be, just some kind of boring JPanel. You could create a JPanel here, like JPanel content equals new JPanel. Okay, this is blank. Oops, I guess I need to import that. JPanel. And so I'm going to set this. And then I could set window dot. Now I need to show it to the world. So you actually have to do this by default. I believe it is false. So make sure you set it to be visible. And you can always just copy and paste this. This is pretty much going to be the same. You can adjust these numbers and see what happens. But yeah, this is pretty much what it's going to look like. So if we run it, you see that, yep, there it is, title. And here's my content. There's no content, but if I had added things, there it would be. So like if I had done stuff like content dot add new JButton test, which I guess I needed to import that as well. Now if I run it, you can see that, oh yeah, okay, there it is. So remember, the window is the JFrame, the JPanel is the content, and again, we're using the JPanel as a container for other things such as buttons and windows. But we don't really want to do this all in main, and so what we're going to do is we're going to define our own class, and we'll actually make this class extend JPanel. It'll actually be a JPanel, and so we're going to do it a little bit differently than this. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this for now. We're going to change this in a second here. So let's go from test panel main. Let's switch over to test panel. Okay, and so we have this class called test panel, and what we want to do oftentimes is want to make these classes. I want this to be a JPanel, right? So see if you remember, what is the keyword that we type in to be? This is a JPanel. It has all the things a JPanel has. It does all the things a JPanel does, and I just want to kind of add on to that. So if you remember from chapter 5, that was extends. Okay, extends. Okay, and I guess we forgot to import all these, so let's just go ahead and import javax.swing. Let's just do them all, so we don't have to do them one by one like we just did. And we're going to also have to use the aught, and that's not javax, it's just java.aught.star. Okay, so these are the two big ones you're going to want to do a lot of the times. If you're using Eclipse, it'll just do it for you if you forget to do that. But yeah, those are the two big ones. Okay, so we've made our test panel. This is a JPanel now, so it can be content. So let's go ahead and make that change actually right now. So jump back with me to the test panel main. So instead of JPanel content, this is just kind of the generic JPanel. We can actually change this to be a type of our test panel. So test panel. Okay, and let's just make it so it's called my content, so we can see, oh yeah, this is like a custom thing here, my content. Okay, and we're going to use that as our content, right? Because test panel is a JPanel, so you can use that. And so now whatever we define in test panel, it'll be put inside that window here. Okay, so what do we want in test panel? So this is the constructor. So what happens when I create this custom JPanel? There's nothing here so far. I just added some comments to help us, to guide us here. So we could add, again, two purposes for JPanel. One is we can draw on it, which we won't do. And then today, what are we doing? We're using it, again, as a container for other things, such as JPanel or JButton or JSlider or anything like that. So we're practicing using a JPanel, a custom one at that, as a container. Okay, so let's practice by just creating a few things like JButtons. So JButton, let's have a button called open. So let's say JButton open equals new JButton, and we'll give it a title open so people know what it does. And let's just have one called close. Okay, so now let's try and run that. So test panel, remember the window, if we go to test panel main, we're using this our custom JPanel here called test panel. So if we run it, let's see what happens, and nothing. Where are those buttons that we just added, open and close? Okay, let's jump back to test panel. Nothing happened. Why didn't anything happen? Because again, what we need here is this syntax of we need to actually add the J components to the container, right? We need to add them. So we need to explicitly say, this is on line 27, I should have put it up here, cut it, paste it. The syntax is always the container dot add component, right? So who is the container? The container is my JPanel object, okay? So I could say something like this, right? So who is the JPanel object? It's actually, it's this, right? It's test panel. So I could say this dot add open, this dot add close, right? So I'm saying this is the JPanel, it's the container. I'm going to add this component open. I'm going to add this component close. Let's try to run that. And there we go. Okay. So that is kind of one way, that's one basic way to do it. We want to make things a little bit more complicated now though. So if I jump back to the lecture notes, actually the simplified version, JPanel, what we want to do is we want to use it like containers within other containers. So like within this JPanel, perhaps I want to have a JLabel, a JButton, but maybe I want to have another JPanel which would itself have JButtons, etc., etc. So multiple layers is what we are looking for now. Okay, so again, we want it to look like, where is it? This is what we want it to look like in the end. So open, close, but then all these guys as well. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Okay, so what we want to do then is we want to add containers within containers. Okay, so let's say I want to add 3 buttons instead of open, close. Let's do open, close, and save. And let's put them up here in this north position. So north, again, what was that? That was this idea that we can have a layout manager. So there's the layout manager we're going to use today is called border layout. So north would be up here, south would be down here. We're going to use south next. West would be over here, east would be over here, and then in the middle would be called center. Again, that's border layout. The other ones are called, I wrote that down here. The other layouts are flow layout, which is the default. All right, we're going to use border layout, and then there's also grid layout, which this is again, it's all just an intro. Don't worry if you're really confused right now that we haven't even gotten to these sections, just like an intro section here. So we're going to just practice using a layout manager though, just so you get exposed to it. Okay, so instead of adding it directly to the JPanel, like open, close, let's create another J button just for fun called save. Okay, and again, rather than adding it to the JPanel directly, let's create a panel within a panel and add it to that instead. So you'll see how that works. So what we'll do is we'll say, okay, I'm going to create a container. What can be used as a container again? What was the container? Again, the JPanel is the container that we're going to use. So it doesn't always have to be a custom JPanel like we have here. I can just use the regular old JPanel class. So let's say JPanel north container equals new JPanel, right? It's just a regular old JPanel, and I could use this as a container. Okay, so again, the syntax is I want to add to this north container, I want to add these 3 buttons, open, close, and save. So I'm going to say north container dot add open, the open button, north container, so I'm going to copy that, paste. So I'm adding to this container, I'm adding the open button, I'm adding the close button, I'm adding the save button. Okay, so if you run it, nothing happened again. What am I forgetting? So I'm a little bit off here, but basically what I haven't done is I haven't actually added this north panel or this north container to the original JPanel, right? So all of these guys are added to the north container, but the north container itself has not been added to our original JPanel, right? This guy itself is a JPanel. So we would say something like this dot add north container. Okay, let's try run it now. And there it is. Now, going back to layouts, you're probably confused still about what are those guys. Okay, so this is the default layout is called flow layout. It's going to just kind of put everything, as many as it can, then when it runs out of space, it go to the next line. We could also do something called a grid layout. So how would I do that? I would just say, all right, north container dot set layouts, and again we'll do all this in a later section. New grid layout, and you give it, I think it's rows by columns. Let's try 1 by 3. I think that was it. I might have to switch that. Okay, I guess that's fine. Let me try 3 by 1. And you can just see how the experiment, there we go. So 3 rows and 1 column. So you can see how we changed that. Grid layout kind of tells you rows and columns. We could do border layouts, then, you know, for these buttons as well. But you can see how that layout would affect how it appears. Okay, and again, flow layout is the default. Flow layout is the default. So if you just do that, it'll look exactly like we had. We could even just delete this here and not have it, and it'll just be a flow layout. Okay, so what we want to do now is again do the bottom row. Okay, we want to do the bottom row so that, let me clear these guys out. On the bottom row so it looks like this. Okay, so what does this look like? So what we have here is, this is a JPanel here. This contains 6 buttons, and that itself is used as the south portion of this whole JPanel. Okay, so it's kind of confusing. Just stick around and watch. But so let me just use a little illustration here. So again, our JFrame was our outer window with no content. We added a JPanel as the content. It could be a regular old JPanel. In our case, it's the test panel. So this whole thing, the content is the test panel. Now, within this JPanel, it's actually a test panel because it's custom. It's test panel. We can have other contents. We can add buttons directly to this JPanel, sliders, whatever, or we could add other containers within that container. So, for example, we're going to set this layout. We're going to set this layout to be border layout. Okay, which means that we're going to have something called the west part, south, east, north, and this is center. Okay, so we're going to put those 3 buttons here in the north. Okay, now again, you can only put one thing in the north here. So instead of putting a button in the north, we're going to make a new JPanel and put that in the north, and then it can hold all 3. Okay, so if we look, that's what we did here. We called this north container. We added open, close, and save to the north container. Okay, so so this was called north container. North container. So we created a new JPanel called north container. North container. And in there we added this button, and this button. And again, it could be different. Even this could be different layout. You could have a grid layout here, you know, 3 by 1, 1 by 3. So we're going to do the same thing to the south. We're going to have this thing here. We can put one thing here. It could be a J button, it could be a J slider, or if I want to be clever about it, I could put, again, here could be a whole new JPanel. I can call whatever I want, and then to that JPanel, I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buttons. Okay, so this is going to be a grid layout. Okay, it's going to be 2 by 3, 2 by 3, right? 2 rows by 3 columns. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then when we're done with all this, we have to add this JPanel guy here back to the main JPanel, which was the test panel. Okay, so that's where we're going with this bottom part. Let's see if we can get there. Okay, so again, I want to create this guy. I want to have a name for it, so I'm just going to call it, you can call it south panel or button panel or whatever you want. It can just be a regular old JPanel. So south panel. Okay, and so I want to, again, the default is called flow layout for layout managers. I'm going to use a border layout, so I'm just going to right away, before I forget, south panel.set layout. And again, if you're confused, don't worry, we will do all this layout stuff again later. Border layouts. Oh, excuse me, I just made a mistake there. So my mistake, see, maybe you caught it if you're paying attention. This is a border layout, right? This guy, this whole thing is using a border layout. However, this kind of container within a container is not a border layout. This is going to be a grid layout. So, my bad. New grid layout. And for a grid layout, you can specify, and we're going to specify it's going to be a 2 by 3. So 2 by 3. And then it's going to add in kind of order the 3 and then 3 and then 3. So we can add, we can create the buttons like this and then add them, or we can just create the buttons as we're adding them. So we can just say something like south panel dot add new J button previous. Okay, right? I could have done something like J button previous equals new J button, like blah blah blah, and then added that instead. I could have added previous, but this is just a little bit faster, so let's just do it that way. So we'll add this guy like this. Da, 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 da. So we're going to add previous. We're going to, oops. We're going to add play. Next, rewind. Pause, forward. Okay, so there we go. We have just created this south panel here. So if I run it, has not appeared. See if you understand. What have I forgotten to do? I have forgotten to add this north panel, south panel to the main panel, to the main container object, right? So again, I did not add this. I created this grid layout guy down here, this blue guy, but I forgot to add this to the actual main guy, which was, again, this is in the border layout. So I'm going to say, hey, this guy with all those 6 buttons I just made, I'm going to add you to the south. You could try changing to the west, to the east, and see what happens, but that's what we're going to do now. So we're going to say, all right, so the main panel is the test panel, and again, we are inside the test panel class, so that's going to be called this. So I could say this.add south panel, and for border layout, you can specify where. So it's a static field, border layout dot, and then you say where, south, north, wherever. So I'll say south. Next, I'm going to add it to the bottom. Okay. Okay. So add that to the south, and I realized I've forgotten to actually set the layout. So I talked about it. So I talked about how, this is a border layout. I forgot to actually set this whole JPanel to be a border layout. So let's make sure we do that. So this, if you actually try to run it now, it would look weird. So we're going to say, all right, excuse me, set this. So set the layout of this main guy as a border layout. Okay, so we just told them, hey, this guy's going to be like this. We added this one to the south, and let's go ahead and add this, the original guy, to the north. We didn't actually do that. If we jump back up to this line here, line 24, this is before we knew about border layout. So let's cut this line. and jump down, and we'll say this dot add, oops, and that was, actually let's paste it in. I'm going to add the north container to the border layout dot north position. And I guess it should have been south container or whatever. I guess the names aren't very consistent. But in any case, if we run it now, we can see, yes, so this is added to the north. This was added to the south. You could change things around. Let's just see what would happen. I'm not even sure exactly how it's going to look exactly. If I did east, okay, so that kind of got added over there. You could see how that changes. You could try like center. Yeah, that probably didn't change unless you had something to the north. But we'll stick with north and south. Okay, so, oh, by the way, again, this could be implied. So instead of doing it like this, you could just say, if I want to do it, I could just cut that and just say set layout, add. So you might see this when you're looking at the example code without the this, right? I like to add the this so I just remember what's going on, but if you have the implied this, I like to do it because, again, it reminds me of the syntax. It's always container, which is this, dot add the components, which is, whatever it is. But you can do either one. So that is that. So now it works.